So, hello everybody. What we're going to be doing is working through a JWT Auth tutorial. And let's give just a little bit of context to this. So there's two words that you should take to heart right this very now. One of them is authentication. The other one is authorization. Collectively, they're called auth, but they're two very different things. And we should know what they are, because we're only doing the first one right now. Any guesses? Anybody know what the difference between authentication and authorization is? Yeah, Cody.
Authentication is making sure that the user has a username and password, and authorization is what access that user has.
Correct. So this is what can you do? This first one would be who are you? So I give you the right username and password. I use Facebook to log in. Facebook is like a validate key. They go, hey, this person says they're Kyle Coberly. Is that accurate? Facebook goes, yeah, they are. They have the password to get into Kyle Coberly's account on Facebook, so we'll sign off that they are who they say they are. You go, okay, cool. I trust Facebook. You trust Facebook. I mean, not really, but we both trust this third-party source as a validator of who somebody is. That's authentication. Okay, we go, all right, it's Arena. Arena's logged into the site. Neat. Authorization is, what is Arena allowed to do? Is Arena allowed to make posts on the site? Sure. Is Arena allowed to delete posts on the site? Sure. Is Arena allowed to delete anybody's posts on the site? To delete her own? No. We're in a situation where she can make stuff, her supervisor has to delete stuff, and only admins can delete everything. That like kind of matrix of responsibilities, that's authorization. And we are not talking about it today. All we're going to talk about is verifying who somebody is. And any questions before we get started on this? Cool. We're going to do this one section at a time, and then we're going to stop and talk. Actually, before we dive in, I'm going to give you one more kind of big picture overview thing. All right, so I've got a browser. And I've got a server. And the way this particular auth system works is we are going to log in by hosting to auth or something like that. And we're going to send it our username and password. Server gets that, and then it needs to verify the password. It does this by taking the password that you send it hashes it, it looks at your stored hashed password, sees if they're the same thing. Assuming they're the same thing, then it's going to generate a token. Token is like a key. And it's going to send it back to you. And then what you do is you send that JWT with every other request. And then when it gets the JWT, it validates the token. If the token is valid, then it sends you whatever you're asking for, lets you do whatever you're trying to do. Get stuff, sends back stuff. This is the basic structure of token-based authentication. I said the username and password. Make sure the password is the right password for that user. If it is, it generates a token, sends it back. We send that token along with any other requests. If the token is right, if the key fits in the lock, it gives us our stuff back. Ta-da! Token-based authentication. Let's start working through the tutorial. So I put this link in the Denver Announce channel. So go ahead and pull this up. Give me a thumbs up when you're ready to go. Keep it up. Good. Danica, Mohammed. What was it? It's in Denver Announce. The link. You don't need to have anything else pulled up yet, just that article. All right. So this is kind of an overview of what we're going to do. We're going to make these 6 routes. This describes what they do. We're going to generate a token. We're going to be able to create a user. We're going to get all the users, return a single user, update a user, destroy a user. So CRUD actions, as well as a login endpoint. So what I want you to do on your own is do everything up to, but not including, create JSON Web Token class. So scaffold the app, add the JWT and bcrypt gem, do this, update these routes. Let's get that far. Go. Yours might be different. bcrypt was in my gem file. It was just commented out, so you can just uncomment it. I'm going to have to add JWT. So gem JWT. That jot gem goes in your gem file. So your gem file should kind of look like that. All right, welcome Damon. We just did the very first part of this tutorial, if you want to catch up. We are at create JSON web token class. Correct. All right, so let's talk about what we did there. Nothing too mind-blowing, but explain this part to me, volunteer. What did we do here? Yeah, Danica. So we're going to hash passwords. Yeah, these are dependencies. We didn't write this code. We want to use this code. That's how we indicate for us and for when we push this up to GitHub and we go, cool, by the way, install all the dependencies. This is what those are. And that takes care of it for us. And then a couple interesting things in the routes here. What's this do? I'm legitimately asking. I don't know. Look it up. Let's figure out what this param does for resources. Go. Cool. Who found it?
It overrides the default.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So when we do resources, it does whatever we call the resource. So in this case, users. And it does users/ID for all the 7 routes that it's going to generate, or 5. But if we don't want to call it ID, because it's not an ID, like in this case it's a username, we can override that. Cool. I think they're literally just using an underscore, but I don't really know that either. Let's see if they access it with an underscore later in the thing. Yeah. Reading it out of this by doing underscore user. Why they went with underscore on that, I don't know. I think that's stupid. I wouldn't do it that way, but whatever, not my tutorial. Okay, and then we have this auth route that we're going to use to log in. I get another volunteer to tell me what this part is doing.
Sending you push requests that go to like the auth login
Uh-huh.
URL to your authentication controller's login method.
Exactly. Action. It's also a method. But yes, the authentication controller's login action is where that request is going to get sent. Yes?
So it creating a new one?
What was that?
It creating a new one every time you log in?
So what we'll do, we're not doing a new login every time. Once we get this jot back, now we can send that with any other request so we don't have to log in every time. It's proof that we logged in.
Oh.
And then, anybody know what this is?
It's not done, essentially, okay.
Yep, that's our 404 handler. We'll call that a catch-all. If it doesn't match anything, by default it gives us a 404 page. We don't want that. We'll also give back a JSON response just with something that we control. Okay, so next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna make this class. So again, give this a shot and then we'll talk about it. Go. And it's gonna go into this. Wow. You'll have to make it. I had to make the lib folder. You might also. Oh, really? Yeah, why don't you throw it in there? Let's give that a shot. Like that. I'm gonna put it in the lib folder directly. We'll see if it causes any problems. Mm-hmm. Ruby is really friendly about white space. I would not have that in there, but I don't think it makes a difference. Stop when you get to the create authorized request function. Good catch, Ben. Okay, let's chat about this a little bit. Lots of goodness in here. So this secret key, that's kind of a neat thing in Rails. So this gives us one magical special key that goes with our application, and like we can use that to do any kind of encryption work that we need to do. So encryption, generally speaking, you take some data, and you take a secret key, and you mess up whatever you're doing, so that you can only retrieve that with the same secret key. And when you make a new Rails app, it just makes one for you. And that's a way that we can access it. Pretty sick. These self-encode and self-decode methods, what are these? Yep, that's what we call it, like in general software engineering terms. And in Rails words, we say that they are class methods. Very nice. This exp equals 24 hours from now. How does this parameter work? That's kind of interesting. It's when it expires.
Well, the thing that I don't understand is the guy who wrote this is like, if you don't give it a time, it defaults to 24 hours.
Yeah.
So like, why set it there to 24 hours if it defaults anyways?
Sure. It's a good question. Can anybody answer it?
Well, I would assume you could set some sort of expiration for your own password, like, you know, if you're away for like an hour, it'll automatically log you out. But if you don't set that expiration, then it'll just keep you logged in for a full day.
Sure.
And then keep you off.
I like it. Other thoughts? Danica? Sure. It's a good, absolutely. Also, you notice how this class is super generic? We could use this with any app. So this is just good library design. Is that, all right, I'm giving you a same default, but with tokens in particular, like there are people that like those to expire much quicker. And so maybe you do want it to do it in an hour. So you've got a same default that you can override if you want to. That makes this a very good utility. What do you think of that, Arena? Sound good? So, what about this next line? That's kind of an interesting one. What's that doing?
Typically, payload is a way to refer to like the body of your request.
Mm-hmm.
So you're making a token here. That's what the encoding is doing. So it's giving your payload that's going to be like sent back and tokenized
Mm-hmm.
an expiration, and then that way it'll have an expiration.
Yes, all that's true. What can we infer about payload from how we're using it here? That's what it would be in gerbil script. It's a hash. In Ruby, and in fact, in most languages, an object is an instance of a class. The way we use that word in JavaScript is truly bizarre. They're not objects. They're a lot more like hashes. Just key value pairs rather than instances of objects. Okay, so we have this hash. We're setting the expiration to whatever got passed in, including maybe what it defaulted to, and then we're using the JWT library that we installed, encoding it. We can also do it the other direction. You give me a token, I can decode it with the secret key. What can we infer about how that library works from this piece? It returns what? Returns some array. So we can probably decode more than one token at once if we need to. And so just by default, it returns an array, which is good. Even if you're returning one thing, if a method can return multiple things, if I'm returning a hash sometimes, an array another times, those are two different data types. Broadly speaking, good design principle, don't return multiple data types if you can get away with it. Much better to do this than have this method be able to return multiple data types.
Would that be like if you with the array of multiple elements, if you are like the user and the admin, or would the admin token like override? I don't know if that makes any sense, but why would you have multiple objects in there?
I can't think of a good reason why you would,
Okay.
but that's whoever designed this gem did it that way. Cool. And then this is a real interesting one. What's hash with indifferent access? Damn it.
It's like I think it's built in. Obviously, it's a built-in thing where when you make a new hash, if you do it with hash with indifferent access, it makes it so that you can use both like string keys and symbol keys, and they'll be interpreted the same.
Exactly. So that's not in Ruby by default. DHH, the guy who made Rails, thought that was a design fail on Motz's part. And so hash with indifferent access does not give a shit if you're accessing with strings or symbols. It just figures out which one you mean. Cool. So there's our JSON Web Token class. Questions about this? Yeah.
If I wanted to set my expiration, would I do it in that code arrangement parameter?
Yeah, when you're calling it. When you call JSON Web Token .encode, you have to give it a payload. You can optionally override the expiration. So that would end up looking like so it's expecting some hash, and so data high. So that's its payload. And then I can just do that if I want. I can also do 1 hours from now if I wanted to. Cool. Other questions about this class we made? Onward. All right, let's do the next heading. Create authorized request function. And then take a look at where this file is. You should have this one already. Just this one heading. Stop at create user model. Okay, excellent. There's some good Ruby happening in this method here. Let's look at lines 8 and 9 on this. Man, it's a little bit cryptic. I'm going to show you what an authorization header looks like. Look like this. And then the actual token data is all there. So that's what the authorization header looks like. I want you to think to yourself, what are these two lines doing? Alright, I'm gonna call on someone. Sorry if you don't get it. Joe, what do you think is happening here? Yep, absolutely. Gets it back, so it gets back that string. And then what does it do? So what kind of data do I have right here once I've done the split? Oop, almost. Split takes a string and turns it into an array. Very nice. And then, why is it splitting here? Let's take a look at the, it's getting this space. So now we have an array with bearer in the 0 index, and the token in the 1 index. And then Joe, finish it off. Yep, exactly. And then what's up with this? It's kind of weird. That's it. So it doesn't stop any of this from happening, but it only runs this part of it if the header exists. In Ruby, you can do the if at the beginning of the statement like you do in every other language, or you can do it at the end. That's actually a pretty cool thing. So that we're describing the thing that we want to do, and then throwing a condition on it. I think that's pretty slick. So to recap, we're reading the authorization header. We're trying to get the token piece out of it if the authorization header was sent at all. We haven't talked a ton about this kind of structure before. What happens with this? Begin, rescue, and end. What are those all about? It's not like case when. There is another language construct that's a lot like. Danica. Yeah.
Begin is where it starts off, and then the rest of these are actually scripts.
Exactly. In C-style languages, this is called try-catch. We're going to try to do this, and if there's any kind of problem, it's going to look for one of these rescue blocks. And it's going to look for the type of error that occurred. And it gives us two kinds of errors. We could either not find the record that we're looking for when we're trying to look up a user, or if the JWT was mangled, if there's some reason that the JWT can't decode it, it throws this error, and it gives us a chance to send back an error message. Dope. And then with this one, we're using that decode function that we wrote, taking in the token that we split out here. And then with that token, we're looking up a user ID and then trying to save that there. Now this is kind of an interesting piece though. We're saving it in these instance variables. Why? What happens next? Think about the kind of controller we're using here. This is part of Rails we haven't really talked about too much. This might illuminate it. We go to any other Rails app that I have. Like this one. If I go into any of these controllers, oh shoot, didn't do it. Maybe. So when I made this controller, What's this first line doing? So, if we call, that means that we have all of these methods available in that controller because it inherited from it. So I can call authorize request in any of those actions, and all of this shit happens, including early exiting if there was something wrong with it, and saving these variables, which I can access from any of the actions. That's what Rails architecture kind of looks like. So we have stuff that's shared between multiple controllers, like authentication. We can create a hierarchy, so all those things can see the right shit. Uh-huh.
What's the action controllers?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. That's Rails magic. I don't know where they put that, but I think it's just built into the framework. Action controller, application controller, dog controller. We could have a base dog controller that other controllers inherit from.
Do we add more stuff for application controllers?
Cool. Other questions about what we've done so far? All right, moving onward. Let's do create user model and controller, and then stop there. Create the user model and then create the controller. Go.
You want us to add the user validation here?
Yes. That's a good question. I don't know. Maybe. All right. All right, I'm gonna take your word for it.
Unless it's an integer.
Nice.
Yeah, I ran into the same thing. Your command list didn't actually circle on the controller though, like, path. So, run command. I don't know.
Until the end of user controller. Stop when you get to authentication controller. It's a sequel to God Friended Me. I can't fucking believe that's a real show. Every time I watch football, the commercials make me depressed. It's like, oh, we're still doing this as a society? Buddy comedies, 3 cameras. This guy! No! This guy!
You know, like the back to back across an arm.
Shoving buddies.
Yeah. Showing
Yes. Unfortunately, God Friended Me is a real fucking show that got renewed, is in its second season right now. And it is about a guy who God friends on Facebook and then makes him do chores.
That's so stupid. You know a lot about this show.
I watch football every Sunday. That would be my definition of a good show. Burn! Zoomer burn!
What's your password for the laptop? You know that one, let me find out my name for Amy's computer. Yeah, that was all. That wasn't in the script. Yeah, that wasn't in the script. No, it
All right, back with me. Let's talk about all the many things that we just did. So we did the user model piece. We'll ignore the mount uploader thing for right now. But hey, this validation business, this should be at least a little bit familiar to us, even if some of these things maybe not so much. This email format one, anybody brave enough to take a guess about what this is doing? No, this is, they are giving you an email and you're making sure that it's a valid email. How do you think it works? Give a guess. So we're validating.
Well, so the email has to be in a specific format.
Correct.
So it has to have like the email name dot gmail.
Sure. How might we make sure that such a thing, that it has the @ symbol and it's got the dots in the right places and all that kind of
That's
stuff?
the email reference he's asking.
Yep. So they have stored the regex that matches the correct format of an email somewhere in Rails, and you can get it this way. Pretty sick. All right, and then over in the controller, a lot of this stuff should be pretty familiar to us. Let's touch base real quick on before action, though. What does that do? That's a huge part of this. Yeah, Katie.
There's one so that you're using several different actions, like so, update and restore.
Mm-hmm.
You're always gonna do at user ready, so don't write everything.
Exactly. Like, so we're authorizing every single request except create a new user. And that sort of makes sense, right? You wouldn't want to require somebody to be a user to create an account, or maybe you would. But to delete an account, to do any of these other things, you need to authorize the request. Where's that method coming from? Application controller. So we can see that method because we're inheriting from this. Sick. Same thing with find user. find user, we define that here, but we want that to run before everything except index and create, so that we can do things like just respond with the user that it found without having to repetitively look them up, or write out the code to look them up every time. So that gives us this instance variable because it ran that method, which saves that instance variable. We do that every time. And if it can't find it, if you're trying to like show something, we can even make the error handling not repetitive. Sickness. Questions about any of the stuff that we did in here? That's a good question. I'm assuming, well, why assume?
So that just means it's like that being like for
Turns the whatever's in your array directly, but turning it separate. Doesn't have to be separate by white space.
There you go. I like it. All right, other questions that came up while we were working on that. Gage. Mm-hmm. So bangs, generally speaking, are mutations. I don't know why that one would have one, though. What do I mean by mutation? Yep. I don't know why that would change something. Find by username. Oh, I see. It it throws an error if it can't find something, rather than
Type out the do not find. That doesn't rescue.
yeah, that rescue catches it
Oh, okay.
and then like lets us respond and stuff. But otherwise, if you try to do find by and it doesn't find something, it just gives you nothing back. We want it to throw an error, and so that's what the exclamation point does. Got it. Dope. Oh, one other thing I wanted to point out on the model is this has secure password. This is what that password digest that we used when we were making the model. That's what that's all about. It'll hash our passwords and does all kinds of cool magic stuff for us. All right, excellent. Other questions that came up? All right, we've got one more section. Let's do this, create authentication controller. And go. By the way, run your migrations if you haven't. Is a thing I just found out. If you get that, I just delete it. Actually, let's do this. Let's break for lunch, and then let's do a part 2 on this one today. Sound good?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, go get some food. Yeah.
No need to do it.